Welcome to Historic Denver's 50th Awards Celebration in Retrospective. I am Annie Levinsky, Historic Denver's Executive Director. And in this most unusual year, I'm so grateful to have all of you join us to celebrate the value of historic places in the city that we all love. 2020 is the beginning of Historic Denver's 50th year. Our organization has witnessed 5 decades of boom and bust in our city, 5 decades of change, and 5 decades of toil, trials, and triumphs to ensure that our historic places remain our guideposts and anchors in uncertain times. This is as true as ever this year, as I know I've taken comfort in the enduring places that make Denver, Denver. Like our beloved historic landmarks and districts, Historic Denver would not have met this milestone without the generous and tireless support of our community. Tonight, I want to especially thank our Board of Trustees for their dedication and generosity in seeing us through this moment. I also want to thank the committee members and leaders who helped us to plan an event like no other in our organization's history. And of course, you, our sponsors, our watch party hosts, and our guests. In particular, I want to thank our silver sponsor, Capital One Cafe, as well as our bronze sponsors, Crane Architecture, Kirkpatrick Bank, Ratio Architects, Sprung Construction, Triba Architects, and ZF Capital. Your support tonight will sustain Historic Denver and our flagship property, the Molly Brown House Museum, and help us to chart a path forward for another 5 decades. Tonight's program includes some really special and exciting performances by people who share our love for historic places, and most importantly, are a critical part of our city's identity and vibrant culture. We know 2020 has presented many challenges, and the artists in our city are no exception, as opportunities to perform live in front of audiences has evaporated for a time. So we're grateful that they can be here with us tonight to share some of their magic. We'll also be revealing the results of our popular vote for the best preservation projects of all time in an awards retrospective video produced by our longtime friends and partners at Havy Pro Cinema. And throughout the evening, we'll also rotate slides highlighting dozens of past award-winning preservation projects, showing the full range of preservation in our city over the last 50 years. We are grateful to the generations of Denverites that have poured their heart and their soul into these projects and into this work. After the awards film, we'll continue our tradition of a short live auction with exclusive and appropriately socially distanced experiences in historic places. And I'm really so grateful and excited to announce that the funds we raise this evening, through the auction and through donations, will be matched dollar for dollar up to $25,000 by a very generous anonymous donor. This will stretch your gifts even further. And we'll have more details later, but if you have not already downloaded our Handbid auction app or gone to the website, I encourage you to take a few minutes now to do that. The instructions were in the advance emails, or you can go to handbid.com and search for Historic Denver. As a quick technical note, if you have any difficulty in streaming the video or accessing Handbid, please call our office at 303-534-5288 extension 5, as staff is standing by to help resolve any concerns. Now please sit back and relax as we get the evening started with a performance by Wesley Schultz of the Lumineers, the Grammy-nominated musicians of international fame that chose Denver as their home more than 10 years ago.
Hello, I'm Wesley Schultz and I play and sing in the Lumineers. Just a couple years ago I moved into this house I'm in right now. It's in a historic neighborhood in Denver and it has this really cool wine cellar, and I really like wine, so that's good. But it was built in 1920. It's one of the youngest houses on the block, but I just love the character and I love all the ghosts and the stories these houses tell. I moved to Denver about 10 years ago, and right around then we were about to put out our first album. We would put it out a couple years later, and this was the first song off that album. It's called Flowers in Your Hair. Here we go. We used to play this at open mics at the Metal Art Bar, right next to the Larimer Lounge, if you know that. The neighborhood was a lot different back then. When we were younger, we thought everyone was on our side. Then we grew a little bit and romanticized the time I saw flowers in your hair. 'Cause it takes a boy to live, it takes a man to pretend he was there. So then we grew a little and knew a lot, and how we demonstrated it to the cops, and all the things we said. We were self-assured, 'cause it's a long road to wisdom, but it's a short one to being ignored. So be in my eyes, be in my heart, be in my eyes, be in my heart. So now I think that I could love you back, and I hope it's not too late, 'cause you're so attractive in the way you move. I won't close my eyes. Oh, it takes a man to live, but it takes a woman to make him compromise. So be in my eyes, be in my heart, be in my eyes, be in my heart. I hope you have a great rest of your gala tonight, and thank you for having me. Take care.
Thank you, Wesley, and thank you so much for being a steward of one of our city's historic homes and for taking the time to be with us this evening. Wesley will be back at the close of this evening's program, so be sure to stick around. Many of our past individual preservation honorees are joining us this evening, including the leader of our next group of performers, Cleo Parker Robinson. Cleo was honored with our Molly Brown Award during our 45th anniversary for all that she has done to advance the arts in Denver, and for her organization's stewardship of the historic Shorter AME Church in 5 Points. Tonight's partnership is all the more fitting because, like Historic Denver, Cleo Parker Robinson Dance is also celebrating 50 years this year. Congratulations, Cleo, for all you've accomplished, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, I'm Cleo Parker Robinson, founder and artistic director of Cleo Parker Robinson Dance. Rooted in the African American traditions and the diaspora, Cleo Parker Robinson Dance has celebrated the rich diversity of the world community for 50 years through the beauty, power, and the passion of the arts. I was born in Denver's historic 5 Points at the Rawsonia Hotel. And for the majority of our 50 years of our company history, our beautiful studios and theater have been housed in the renovated Shorter AME Church building at the corner of 20th and Washington. 5 Points has always been about breaking the rules, with iconic African American musicians bringing people together through jazz in a way that wasn't possible for the longest time anywhere else in Denver. Growing up with that kind of history all around me, no wonder I knew that 5 Points was the place where I wanted my company to make its home. When Dr. Maya Angelou and I came together in the 1980s to create a work called The Lush Life that honored the traditions and culture of those incredible musicians and jazz clubs, we drew on our experiences in New York City's Harlem. But you know, I brought all my memories of 5 Points. We called it the Harlem of the West. I hope you take this opportunity to gain a greater awareness of Denver's incredible 5 Points community and its importance in shaping the history of our city. Having been the recipient of the Molly Brown Award in 2015, it gives me great joy to congratulate Historic Denver on its 50th anniversary, a celebration we share as both organizations achieved this extraordinary milestone in 2020. Our city is fortunate to have such a dedicated organization committed to the preservation and advancement of our richly diverse history.
Good evening, everyone. This is Federico Pena. Cindy and I are pleased to be tonight's honorary co-chairs. As a young man, I found the value of historic places inside the old train station that my father used to use for his cotton business. I'll never forget the beautiful tiles, the unique roof structure, and much, much more. In fact, today, that old train station has been converted into a museum in Brownsville, Texas. So as mayor, it was natural to work with Historic Denver on efforts to create new historic districts like our very famous Lower Downtown Historic District, or LODO, to save buildings that brought meaning and economic revitalization and cultural value to our city. I'm very grateful for the work that Historic Denver has done over 5 decades. Imagine that, 50 years. How many organizations are active for 50 years? And to all the citizens and civic leaders that have contributed to the successful projects that we're celebrating tonight, each contributes to making Denver a great city. I've had the honor of attending the Historic Denver Dinner at the Brown Palace in the past, including the year that I was honored with the Keystone Award, and we know what a special event it is. I know we'll all be there again to celebrate new projects and new leaders in the future. But this evening, we're very grateful to still be able to gather in new ways for the same purpose. I hope you caught the number of past award-winning projects in the lead up to the main show tonight, and these images will play again later on so you can appreciate the depth and the breadth of the preservation efforts across our city. This year, the community weighed in to select the best preservation project per decade from among those exceptional past Historic Denver Award winners. So you're going to be the first to learn the outcome of this popular vote. And so without further delay, I'm honored to introduce the 2020 Preservation Awards retrospective film. Please enjoy.
In the 1960s, Denver, like a lot of American cities, went through a massive period of urban renewal. And the philosophy at the time was that the best way to revitalize the city was to tear down the old dilapidated buildings and to clean the slate for new development. And that gave rise to Denver's preservation movement. The real catalyst was the Molly Brown House, which at the time was owned by a gentleman named Art Leisenring. He needed to sell it, and he was concerned that as soon as he did, it would be demolished. So he reached out to community leaders, including First Lady Ann Love, Dana Crawford, and Joanne Dittmer, and asked them for help. And the group got together and ultimately did purchase the house. They named the new organization Historic Denver, and it was incorporated on December 11th of 1970. And then the Molly Brown House Museum opened in March of 1971. Denver's preservation movement quickly became one of the largest in the country. Molly Brown House really connects us to all of those things that are intertwined in Denver's past. It's not only Historic Denver's flagship property, but is a symbol of all that Denver has achieved in historic preservation for 50 years. In order to kick off our 50th anniversary celebration, we had to have a long list of all of the projects that have won awards from our organization since 1970. And we ended up with 44 nominees across all of those 5 decades. We put together a survey because we wanted to know what places do people really love and that have had a lasting impact on their lives. And from that list, we culled our winners, 1 per decade, as well as some all-time fan favorites.
I first went down there on a Sunday afternoon with a friend who was a photographer. And I can remember taking those pictures to a Historic Denver board meeting and showing them to Don Eder. And I said, Don, I think we should do something about this.
It was against all odds because the establishment felt that it was intrusive into the wonderful campus that we have down there for 3 colleges now. And one of the tricks was to find a way to save a piece of the neighborhood.
The concept of adaptive use of old buildings was almost unheard of in Denver at that time. And to have the idea that if you could save a representative selection of homes and then the corner store to help people understand what that neighborhood had been like was a real challenge. Historic Denver raised almost $1 million to do that project, and then when it was over, all of it was donated to the state to be part of the university.
If you recognize not only the architecture of an individual structure, but the community that surrounded it, the neighborhood, and understand that it integrates, that has an impact.
The Mayan Theater Challenge was another one of those great causes, and we had a great neighborhood organization who were trying to preserve the theater. The wrecking ball was about ready to hit the theater wall, and we saved it, I think, on a Friday afternoon. It was owned by Canadians who were trying to demolish it, and I called an individual who was very involved in that, and he stepped forward and helped us preserve the building and give us more time to come up with other concepts and to come up with a compromise, and that's what finally happened. Today we enjoy the Mayan because of some decisions that people made back then to take a chance and to listen to the community.
Mayan is one of those iconic sites in Denver. Everyone knows where it is, everyone recognizes the sign. It certainly has a nod to some of our Southwestern origins and to that creative Art Deco time in Denver's history as well as nationally. So it's unique. We don't see a lot of historic buildings like it, and especially because we've lost so many theaters in Denver, the Mayan really stands out as a special place.
The history of the Teatro is very important to Denver. It was the Denver Tramway Company in 1910. It was the same time that they were building the Daniels and Fisher Clock Tower 1 block away. There was a sense of optimism in the building in every detail, the commitment to quality. We had a very special building to work with from the very beginning. Well, you know, when you look at the siting of the tramway building next to the Performing Arts Center, it became obvious the idea of the culinary arts with the Kevin Taylor restaurant all tied into something that was really focused on the art of hospitality. This was a community effort, and Historic Denver guided us in the principles of creating a new design and a new addition to the building that would last. And so they were our partners all the way through. We began the decade of the 90s by tearing down the Central Bank building. It was a very poignant moment for our city, and so we ended the 90s with the preservation and the adaptive reuse and the successful reintegration of the tramway building into our future.
The streetcars in those days had a big sign on the back of them that listed all of the streets the car would stop at. There wasn't enough room for all the streets that it actually stopped at when it stopped on Welton. So they put it down as 5 points, and it was 5 different streets that came together in front of the Rossoni. We worked very hard to get 7 buildings landmarked, talking about the history of 5 Points and the people who grew up, lived there, made their lives, and survival. The African Americans were forced to live just in that area of the city, so there are wonderful buildings chronicling that history. People can come to the cultural district of 5 Points and find out about the jazz history and the people who built the businesses. Historic Denver should have the credit for continually talking to the neighbors, keeping people engaged, There would be no historic cultural district of 5 Points had it not been for historic Denver.
When people say or are doing any renovation, I always refer to, no, we're doing restoration. And that's what we are basically doing on an ongoing basis in a hotel that is 123 years old. The Brown Palace Hotel has an excellent reputation. I mean, in all the other cities I worked in, people always refer to as this historic Grand Dam Hotel of Colorado. What surprised me the most was how engaged the citizens of Denver and Colorado are with this hotel. You know, their grandparents took them for tea, their parents took them for brunch, and so everybody has a story about the Brown Palace Hotel. And that's an honor for us to also keep that legacy alive. We had the Beatles staying here with us at the hotel in 1964. We have a room service waiter, and he said, I remember delivering peanut butter and jelly sandwich to John Lennon. We touch people's life by appreciating our history, celebrating today, and inspiring tomorrow's memories.
You don't always get the opportunity to do something of such importance to the city and to your community.
What an honor to be able to leave some fingerprints to our future.
We don't experience a sense of monumentality and sense of arrival anymore in our lives. And that's why our historic buildings are so important, because they were conceived and built in a time when those were important aspects. And it's something that is really embodied in Denver Union Station.
I hope people look back and say they had the foresight and vision and commitment to do the right thing. We were thinking about the next 100 years.
It'll be interesting to watch Denver Union Station become part of the larger fabric of the community and really influence how we travel and how we build out our community going forward.
There are people coming in from all over the world, and that's going to be their first impression of our city. And then as they walk out the front door of the station and they look at lower downtown with the high rises of downtown Denver in the background, they're going to think this is a place where people really care about their built environment. I've been looking for a long, long time, driving around looking for this area that I wanted to have a sense of a gathering place, a place that told the story of Denver. And I discovered the 1400 block of Larimer. And of course it was slated for demolition. And then it became a very big obsession, truly, to save the block. There was an absolute belief that it was not viable on an economic basis, because who in the world would want to go down to those old neighborhoods and go into those broken down old buildings? I could see it, and then I found some investors that could also see it with the gas lights there and with the traffic on the street. I think that the preservation movement obviously is light years ahead of where it was in the middle 60s, but it's something that one has to be ever vigilant about, because within the past year or two, Larimer Square itself, under new ownership, has proposed, you know, a 40-story building on one side of the street. And I think you'll see that going on all over America. As more and more people move to cities, we have to be prepared.
Historic Denver's last 50 years hopefully can be a predictor for the next 50 years. Just as our city is constantly evolving, so is our understanding of the past. Because the architecture doesn't stand alone without the stories of the people who have infused meaning into those places over time.
We need arts preservation, history, landmarks, locations that reflect where we are as a people, where we have been, and where we're going.
Well, it's amazing how we just used to restore the castles and the great landmarks. Now we're more interested in neighborhoods, and particularly the diverse neighborhoods of the city.
When you finish it, there is this amazing social dividend where people come and acknowledge how great this space is. People really do appreciate saving something and reinvigorating it and bringing new life to it.
Well, everything that we have done, the National Trust in Denver, we've done side by side with Historic Denver. They really continue to be a leader for preservation, not just in Denver, but really across the country.
If you are touched by a place, then you are a preservationist, because it is in the places that speak to our hearts that we leave the mark of our souls.
Congratulations to all this year's feature projects. These truly are the places that make Denver a unique and special city. Also, thank you to the visionaries and the stewards that work to save these places of our past so we can continue to experience them long into the future. And thank you, Havy Pro Cinema, for their efforts to make that beautiful video tribute. I am Walter Huff, a member of the Board of Historic Denver and this year's Annual Awards Committee. And I'm thrilled to be here tonight to talk a bit more about our 50th anniversary plans. In the video, you had a chance to hear a little bit about Historic Denver's beginnings and the early days at the Molly Brown House Museum, which continues to be a place of meaning and relevance in our city, where we tell the story of one Western woman who made change in the world, and where we work to connect the past and the present to inspire future advocates. The early founders of Historic Denver knew they weren't just creating a new nonprofit in 1970. They were launching a movement and a way of thinking about historic places that has stood the test of time and produced all the successes we're celebrating tonight. Each generation must take up the cause with the same enthusiasm to make a difference in our city. Earlier this year, we as a board made a commitment to use our 50th anniversary to identify and advocate for the next 50 places worthy of preservation in our city. Over the next year, we will be engaging with you, our community at large, to help us identify the places and stories that are not yet well known and that are important to save and to share. Places that reflect the full breadth of our city's story and diversity inherent in our culture, heritage, and built environment. We will then work to proactively develop meaningful partnerships and actions that will tell these stories and support the preservation of sites of relevance in our city. We're calling this campaign 50 Actions for 50 Places, and it begins tonight. It's our goal to raise $50,000 to do this work. And as Annie mentioned earlier, each auction purchase or gift you make tonight will be matched by a generous donor. So if we could raise $25,000, we'll unlock the full $50,000. So get out your smartphones and get ready for your handbid app. We know many of you have already given to Historic Denver as members, patrons, sponsors, and friends, and we are so grateful, especially in this moment. We hope you consider supporting this campaign as well so we can continue to build on the great legacy of Historic Denver.
Thank you so much, Tom, for taking that on, and to everyone that participated in the auction and the paddle raise. We are so humbled and grateful for the show of support for the work of Historic Denver in this turbulent year. Our handbid giving platform will remain live and active, and any gifts made between today and the end of October will also support the 50 Actions campaign. So please encourage friends and colleagues to join the effort. We know that historic places in Denver will endure, and thanks to your continuing support and the gifts you made tonight, our organization will also endure into our next 50 years. I look forward to seeing you all in person at the Brown Palace Hotel for our 2021 awards event and our traditional celebration. But to close the evening, I'll simply say thank you once more and turn it over to Wesley Schultz of the Lumineers for our last song.
Hello again, this is Wesley from the Lumineers, and I'm going to play one more song for you. I hope you've had a great Historic Denver remote gala, and I hope next year we can all actually gather together and see some of these places in person. It's been a very, I think, up and down and hard year for everyone. This is a trauma that we're all going through together, and I thought there was a good song to end with. So this is a song I think of a lot of hope. This is called Stubborn Love. 1, 2. Lie and steal and cheat, and beg you from her knees, make you think she means it this time. She'll tear a hole in you, the one you can't repair. But I still love her, I don't really care. When we were young, whoa, we didn't know. When it got cold, ooh, we bundled up. I can't be told, I can't be done. It's better to feel pain than nothing at all. The opposite of love's indifference. Pay attention now. I'm standing on your porch, screaming out, and I won't leave until you come downstairs. So keep your head up, keep your love, keep your head up, my love. I would do the same, you best believe. There's the highway sign saying close, but I don't read those things anymore. I never trusted my own eyes. When we were young, whoa, we did enough. When it got cold, ooh, we bundled up. I can't be told, I can't be done. So keep your head up, keep your love, keep your head up, my love, keep your head up, my love. Take care, y'all.